are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome to the Locked On NFL Draft Saturday live stream. And I did it again, guys. I gotta remember to take this banner off when we go live. But man, it's your boy Damian Parson. You can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL with my guy, my brother Keith Sanchez. You can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, how we doing on this Saturday morning, bro?
DP, like I say on Saturdays, man, it's Saturday. College football is on, man. Life is good. It is what it should be, right? And DP, let's kick this thing off, man. Let's kick this thing off. We're about to jump right into it. We have a Saturday night showdown, man. We get University of Texas traveling to Alabama, right? So we get some Longhorn on Crimson Tide crime around here, man. Saturday night last year, right? It was what, a 20-19, I believe, game, right? Alabama pulled it out at the last second at Texas, but there's quite a few headlines, right? This is a totally different team. Alabama's roster depth chart looks different. Texas is returning a lot of the same players, right? So I want to start from the very top. DP, we had Quinn Ewers last year, right? He got injured. That was the infamous shoulder injury. People were saying that, it was a little dirty by the Alabama football player, but, we're not going to speculate or we're not going to judge, right? Football is football. But I want to talk about Quinn Ewers going against this Alabama defense. What do you expect to see? We know we have Steve Sarkisian in place, right? He's coached with Nick Saban. Nick Saban is like 20-2, right? With the 2 losses to Kirby Smart, right? So, Kirby Smart's the only assistant that has beat him. What are you expecting from Steve Sarkisian when you marriage what happened last year, right? What we're seeing with Quinn Ewers to what this year looks like, the defense, the play calling, and everything else. So let's get this thing started, man. What are you expecting to see from Quinn Ewers tonight?
Man, what I'm hoping to see, Keith, is a guy that's decisive with the football, accurate at all 3 levels of the defense, and just in control, right? Like, I want to see the Quinn Ewers for a full game that we saw early in that game last year, where he was throwing dimes on the Alabama secondary. I want to see him do that again, and especially now when you factor in is this year 2 with Steve Sarkisian in Texas?
Yeah,
year 2,
last
3,
year was year 1.
So, year 2 in this scheme, but also adding AD Mitchell, right? Coming over from Georgia, he's going over to Texas. So he's one of those kind of 4 or 5 star athletic, big time playmakers at the wide receiver position. Jatavian Sanders and Xavier Worthy. Man, I just want to see him get the ball to these guys, right? When the run game is there, lean on it, play action, do those type of things, and put pressure on Alabama, from an offensive standpoint, where, Jalen Milroe isn't facing Quinn Ewers, but if Quinn Ewers can go out there and score early, then he can put pressure on Jalen Milroe, and they don't even see the field at the same time.
Yeah, last year's game, DP, was 20-19, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I'm expecting a much higher score, right? I'm expecting this thing to touch the 30s because this is what I do believe with Quinn. I think Alabama's going to have to keep pace with Texas because Texas is going to come out there throwing a rock. You mentioned Texas has, we did our summer scouting. Texas has some of the best skill position, one of the best skill position groups, right? When you talk about their tight end, Jatavian Sanders, right, operating in the middle of the field, Xavier Worthy, one of the quick twitch, explosive guys in college football. Then you get the bigger body guys, right, in AD Mitchell and Isaiah Nair returning from an ACL injury. So that's 4 guys right there.
About Nair for some reason.
Yeah. On top of, their running backs, right? So this offensive skill position group is loaded from that perspective. So I'm thinking last year we seen a lot of, and they kind of showed us on ESPN too, right? That when Texas took their shots, it was a lot of 2-man routes, max protect, right? But now with the absence of Will Anderson, right, and potentially we have to figure out who's going to be that next great edge rusher or defensive lineman for Alabama. Can you send 3-4 people into a route, right, and take and get really interesting and really complex with your route concepts, and that'll lead to some busted coverages on the back end, which when Alabama gives up 30-40 points in a game, it's because they've had multiple busted coverages, right? We've seen that from when Lane Kiffin has been able to scheme this defense up. It's been busted coverages. So I want to see if that's going to happen. And honestly, I think that's what's going to happen.
Keith, and to your point, right, for those who really value the PFF grades and stuff, so I'm looking at PFF and for the offensive line for Texas, just as off of just last week's game, you had two offensive line, their tackles, Christian Jones and Kelvin Banks Jr., both around, Christian Jones in pass protection, graded out with a 78.7, and Kelvin Banks Jr., 80.8, right? Both of them good grades. Then you kind of took a little step down with the guard in the center, Hayden Connor, 66.1 pass blocking grade, and then the center Jake Majors with a 65.9, right? And then now the one guy who didn't grade too well was DJ Campbell, one of the opposite guard. He had a 60.8, so he's like 2 tier below the top two guys. So it's going to be interesting just to see how they handle this defensive line from Alabama, right? Because Dallas Turner off the edge. You still have Chris Braswell. So the tackles are really going to be they're going to be tested, but I think they're good enough to hold their own. It's going to be okay if Bama throws those TEET type of stunts on the interior, right, to create some chaos for the center guard trio. How do those guys handle it? How do those guys stand up to it? Because if you don't protect Quinn, you don't open up any lanes in the run game, man, it's going to be tough sledding. Especially that this game is in Alabama. Like last year, the game was in Texas. This game is in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be tough sledding if they can't get it together. You have
to jump on that crowd. And DP, I've had this conversation with you before. Haven't had it, on the podcast. But so when we went down to Alabama in 2019, right? And, we remember the game, we got on Alabama early, right? We got on them early and it was a pretty quiet crowd. It was like, okay, we can do this, right? This is calm, cool, collective, right? We can hear ourselves think. Everybody can talk to each other across the field. Coaches can talk to the players. Players can talk to the coaches. But, oh, baby, when they came back, that was a different atmosphere. When that crowd got into it, man, and those lights started flashing, the little strobe lights and everything, and it was dark and it was bright and it was dark again. And I'm like, what is going on? And you just felt like you was in a Twilight Zone. And I'm like, okay, this is what they're talking about, right? This is the Alabama home field advantage. And now I feel like we're in a real football game right now. We're the away team. And so if you're Texas, you want to have some of that same equation, right? You don't want them strobe lights going in the first quarter, because I promise you in trouble if them strobe lights are going in the first quarter, DP. So that's what I'm hoping to see Texas jump out early. So we talked about Texas offense versus Alabama defense. Let's flip the coin, DP. Let's talk about Alabama's offense versus Texas defense, right? Because Texas, it's been a while, right, since the national championship run that they've had this dominant defense, right? So you're expecting Alabama to score points. Now, Alabama, it's been a while since they've not had a first-round quarterback, right? And they have Jalen Milroe, right? He had a pretty efficient showing last week, although, quote-unquote, lesser competition. First big game, DP. Second big game for him, right? But, as the real starter, this is your entire job to lose, because he did start against Texas A&M last year. But what are you expecting for Jalen Milroe, DP? How does he put up points? What's the equation for this offense? Because this is a new offense, from wide receivers to offensive line to tight end, right? They lost a lot over the past 2 years.
New OC.
New OC. So there's a bunch of new names. So how does Jalen Milroe get to that, or Jalen Milroe and this Alabama offense get to that 30, 35 point threshold?
Man, I think it's going to be just very balanced with him, man. I watched the tape of him. Like you said, it was lesser competition, but I felt like he played competent, really good football, getting the ball out of his hands, accurate. He showed the arm talent, man. Keith, watching him, to me, it was a vast difference than what I saw when he came in. I forgot what game that was, at A&M when Bryce was hurt with the shoulder.
He started. Yeah, he started that.
Right. So I felt like he was more run heavy in that game. He wasn't the starter, so he wasn't prepped like a true starter that's played and started multiple games or had the summer to gear up for his first start. I saw a young man that was in control. He was calm, poised, cool, calm, and collected in the pocket. And again, trusting his eyes. Now you want to see. I would like to see him anticipate a little bit better. Like, you know what I mean? Like they had like this nice little route concept out of a kind of a tight alignment where he had the out route, kind of an option route to one of the underneath receivers, and he hit him. But it was like, Jalen, just get it out there as he's breaking, because the separation is clearly there. Just get it out there as he's breaking.
Those windows are going to be tighter, right? When you're talking about higher competition, those windows are going to be tighter. So there's a reason why you have to throw with anticipation, when you get to the NFL, but then also when you get to those, closer games, the defensive backs are better, right? The coverages roll just a little bit better. The linebackers are better, right? As far as in space and everything. So I agree with you from that perspective.
I just want to see if he can be Jalen Hurts for this offense, right? Just, I think he's probably more athletic than Jalen Hurts in terms of speed.
So can he, and is that fair? That's a twofold question. Can he, and is that fair, right, to be Jalen Hurts, right? And now we're saying Jalen Hurts, but are you saying Jalen Hurts when Jalen Hurts is at Alabama and also lost his job to Tua? Like, what are we talking about, right? Because
the year before he lost his job to Tua.
Okay.
Be that Jalen Hurts, where it's like, and I think right now as a passer, I think he could be a little bit further ahead in terms of his mechanics, his footwork and everything than Jalen Hurts was at the time. Jalen has developed a ton ever since then. But I think with Jalen Milroe, because I realize they're both named Jalen, for Jalen Milroe, I think that's going to be a big thing for him, Keith. It's just going out there, playing both ends. Anytime I talk to any mobile quarterback, I always tell them the same thing. I remember talking to Malik Cunningham about this, that last summer. I said, listen, at the end of the day, they know you can run. All right. They're going to prepare for that. So if they want to take away your legs, you got to hurt them with your arm. You got to hurt them with your mind. Anticipate throws, throw with timing, different things like that. Be accurate. Make them have to think about your arm and forget about your legs, right? And that was some of the things that we've seen, the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens, those type of quarterbacks where you start dropping back hoping that, all right, I forget that he's a mobile guy, and then you try to run man-to-man, and he gas you. That's what I want Jalen Milroe to do with his arm, is force them into man-to-man coverage and then see what opportunities you will have as a runner.
All right, so I want to jump into that just a little bit, DP, because I'm asking, right, is this in preparation for the NFL or is this in preparation for this game, right? And the reason I'm asking is because we've seen quarterbacks run the ball 10 times, 12 times for 130 yards and dictate the game, right? Like we've seen that happen before, like in college football. Now we know in the NFL, unless you're Cam Newton or Lamar Jackson, that's not a sustainable model, right? Or Michael Vick, right? Like we've only seen maybe 3 to 5 quarterbacks with that being a sustainable model. But in college, we've seen tons, right? We've seen Dennis Dixon. We've seen Marcus Mariota. We've seen Troy Smith, right? We've seen so many people do that. So my question is this, that can that be a winning recipe for Jalen Milroe and this University of Alabama offense?
I think so. I think he can run for 100, but I think he has the potential as a passer to be a 200 plus per game passer. Okay. It's going to be, of course, indicative and you need consistent play from the wide receivers. Yeah, I think he should absolutely do both, right? I don't say just be a straight battering ram and stuff like how the Panthers would use Cam at times. Like you don't have to put your body at risk like that, but definitely use your legs, whether it's moving the launch point, creating with your legs, getting out of the pocket, but then also in the run game. If they want to play man-to-man, they want to rush 4, or if they want to blitz you and they rush. I always talk about this rushing with discipline. If they don't rush with discipline and stay in their lanes, then you gash them. You make them pay for that. Remember Utah last year, not keying in on Anthony Richardson, knowing that he's a running threat, and he gashed them for 64 touchdown, right? So he did the same thing to LSU and a couple other teams. So, that's just what it is. Do that when it comes down to it. But, Keith, I want to highlight somebody, man. I want to highlight this guy in terms of draft stock pointing up, and that is defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat from the University of Texas. This guy, Bama better figure it out. They got to figure out how they got to figure out how to block him, Keith, because looking at the what he did last week, right? Run defense, he was their highest graded per PFF, highest graded run defender, shy of a 90 grade. He had 3 run stop, 3 tackles, all that good stuff. But then for a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", 360. Right, what you typically think about it, Keith, like, he ain't doing much in the pass rush game. Now he had 2 QB hits, he had a hurry, you know what I mean? He was able to get back there. He was one of their highest graded pass rush. He was the highest graded pass rusher actually with a 91.1. So T'Vondre Sweat, Keith, I think it's going to be imperative. Like they have to block him. Bama has to figure out how to block him because this guy here, I think, can wreck this game for that Alabama offensive line.
Yeah, I'm glad you left off on that point, right? Because this is gonna come down to me for the Alabama offensive line, DP. They gonna have to just get the job done, right? And I want to highlight the offensive line, right? Because we know J.C. Latham, but they have freshmen, right? Caden Proctor in there, Tyler Booker, who's a sophomore, Seth McLaughlin, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and then Darian Delcourt. They're both seniors, graduate guys. So they have, like a pretty formidable offensive line. Then now you look at the running backs, Jace McClellan, who I think is solid, right? I don't love, I think he's okay. Roydell Williams, freshman Justin Haynes. That's the two guys that I'm pegging that if this Alabama offense, like the run game, is going to be on the shoulders of those two guys getting the job done. And then we'll wrap this up real quick. These wide receivers, somebody has to show up, right? Somebody got to show up because it's been long since a Julio Jones, a Calvin Ridley, a Jerry Jeudy,
Amari
right?
Cooper.
Williams, Amari Cooper. Who's next up, right? And real quick, DP, this is a thing, right? Like don't not think this is a thing. When you commit to these schools as a wide receiver, as a young guy, you get phone calls from those older guys, right? You can best believe at LSU when a defensive back committed to a school, right? And, he wasn't playing. He got phone calls from some all-pro former LSU players. Like, man, that is not the standard, right? We take pride in what we do. So one of these wide receivers has to show up. I'm sorry. You had the 5-star by your name, right? You came in highly touted, everything else. Somebody has to show up and show out because it's just, like just keeping the lineage. But then also, like you said, in order to win a national championship, you Alabama, you know that we need balance with this thing. So somebody has to show up. DP. I want to talk about lineage, right? We're about to transition lineage, right? And we talk about a program that's historically people love, and they love to say it's back, right? The U, right? Every year we get it. The U is back. The U is back. It's almost like I said, it's almost like the Cowboys are winning a Super Bowl, right? Like those are two things that you're going to hear every single year. But we get Miami facing off with Texas A&M. Texas A&M has their own set of problems, right? What is their problems? They paid Jimbo Fisher all this money. They came in last year super hyped up, overhyped, right? What Appalachian State came in there and beat them, right? Came in there and beat them, and it was downhill from there. They made some transitions, DP. Quarterback, right? They put, a injection of youth at the wide receiver position, and then they brought in our guy, Bobby Petrino, right? To call some offensive plays, DP. I know this was a matchup that you seen, right? And you was like, you know what? I want to jump into this because you felt like there was RESPECT, some respect that needed to be had one way or the other. So I'm going to pass the baton to you and let you go from there and talk about what perspective do you see with the approach for this game.
Yeah, this is the battle of respect, Keith, all around, right? Both teams coming off wins, but A&M has been highly touted as having some of the best recruiting classes in college football over the past couple seasons, right?
They got to convert them, though. They have to convert
them, right? And what does that land on? The shoulders of whoever's at quarterback. They have not had good quarterback play, and it's like, can Jimbo fit? And I think that's going to be the big thing. Jimbo, you got Connor Wegman, who's coming off a good game, 5 touchdowns, 72% completion, 236 passing yards. All that sounds good. But against this Miami defense, Keith, it's going to be tough sledding with that defense, man. James Williams, right? Cam Kinchens at free safety. But then you also factor in Leonard Taylor on the defensive line. They have an edge rusher. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he's another talented dude. This defense can get after this A&M offense. So for me, it's all about the battle of respect. Because if you think about it from Miami's side, Miami comes into this game and Miami handles business, the U will definitely be called back. There will be people chanting that the U is back.
Yeah, but DP, I'm not trying to hear it, right? I'm not. And listen, I love Miami. I love University. I like the University of Miami. but the city of Miami, right? And it's not even to go Stephen A. Smith, but I fully understand Stephen A. Smith just for like Miami. It's just a good vibe when you're down there. It's the palm trees, man. It's the outside. It's the being on the beach, right? Like you love, but I don't want to hear Miami is back right now. Even if you win this game, I'm not trying to hear that right now because when all the documentaries came out, right, and it was all about the U. What was the standard, DP? The standard was championships, right? The standard was ACC championships, right? The standard was being a top 10 team. So until they finish there, you know what I'm saying? Finish there, then we can start talking about it, right? But just being 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, I don't want to get to that point, right? And the thing is that maybe I don't want to say I'm emotional about it, but I want to see it happen. I want to see Miami back. I think we all want to see the U is back, right? Like we all want that to happen. So I think that's why I'm tired of getting my hopes up, DP. I'm tired of getting my hopes up, man. And then they let us down, and then we talk about this collapse. But real quick, you talked about this Miami defense. What is this Miami offense, DP? Right? Like we get Tyler Van Dyke again with, I think he's a senior this year, right? Because
pretty sure
the 2021 campaign was good. It got you excited about the 2022. The 2022 campaign was all bad, right? So now you walk into 2023 with minimal expectations, right? And I don't know what happened. I don't know if Mario Cristobal came in here, changed offensive schemes or whatever. I just know that was not the same Tyler Van Dyke that I've seen in 2021 because I was excited to watch Tyler Van Dyke in 2022 and thought that he was going to make a case to be a day 2 pick in this upcoming in 2023's draft. I'm sorry, but that was not the case. He's coming back. So we look at these offensive skill positions, right? We know that they have, running backs like Jalen Knight and but what is the expectations? Like how do they create the recipe for scoring points to this Miami offense?
They got to protect Taylor Van Dyke. They got to protect him, man. Like, and there's one guy, Francis Muiga, Goa. That's best I got for you. But 6'6", 315, he struggled last week against Miami of Ohio. Talking about 4 pressures allowed, 3 hurries, and a sack. His pass blocking grade from PFF was a 27, right? So, and I don't know because what was the big time recruit at tackle that we talked about this summer? I'm blanking on his name. He's been there for couple years, and we're ready for him to go to the draft. Play tackle. He's supposed to be playing tackle. I don't think he played week 1. I cannot remember his name for anything right now, but he's been the guy that we talked about with TDN over the summer last year. Thought he was going to come out this year. He went back to school playing left tackle, and they need whoever. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I don't have my spreadsheet open, but they need him back because Francis cannot go back out there and perform the way he did last week against A&M. You know what I mean?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I made this so much.
He's not. I'm looking at the depth chart. He's not even on the depth chart.
That's wild because I'm pretty sure he went back to school.
Yeah, on our last, he's not on the depth chart. I know exactly who you're talking about.
That's not good.
These wide receivers, right? You're talking about Xavier Restrepo has to get it going. Jacoby George, right? Kobe Young. Some of these young guys, right? Ray Joseph, Shamar Kirk, right? That like Tyler Harrell. I guess he's at Miami now, and I'm not sure.
He transferred. He only had 1 catch last week too. So I mean, we haven't seen a lot of him in 2 years.
Yeah, so I don't know about that, but yeah, I'm definitely looking at this Miami offense, and I'll tell you this real quick before we move on to facing the spread. That's gonna be it. What offense looks competent, I think, is going to win this game, right? What offense is consistent? You talked about your Clemson Tigers, right? Shooting himself in the foot. What offense doesn't create those mistakes? The one that goes out there. This is one of those, you get those cliche stats, right? It's like, whatever offense has the less turnovers, that's who's going to win the game. I think that's going to apply for this game, right? Like whoever has the less turnovers, simply convert on third downs, things like that, just looks to be competent because they both, even in a good showing, one of them has to win, one of them has to lose, right? But in a good showing, you don't know if this is good on good or bad on bad. So whoever wins or loses, they can go from here and build on this if they just playing efficient football, right? And both be kind of that disruption in their conference, right? Can Miami go disrupt some stuff in the ACC with Clemson shooting themselves in the foot, right? And then can A&M right? With LSU not having a good showing, be that SEC West competitor. So it'll be interesting, DP. But look, man, that's the two biggest games, right, that we talked about. But man, we have facing the spread, right? We went 1-0 last week, right? It was a Colorado TCU. Colorado shook the world, shocked the nation. DP, we did a good job. We picked the spread.
We did.
Pick Colorado in this situation. Colorado is not going to get beat by 21 points. I said potentially 19 or 20. I was wrong, right? We have to come on here and we have to say when we're wrong. I was wrong. They actually won the football game, man, and shout out to the Colorado Buffaloes for that. But DP, we have another facing the spread. Which one do we have this week? What's the surprise for this week?
Man, Colorado's back on the schedule, Keith. They back on tap. Colorado versus they're at home. This home opener. They're bringing in Matt Rule and Nebraska, who we saw versus Minnesota week 1 did not look great, right? You know, turnovers. There was a lot of bad things that went on in that game for Nebraska. Now you're walking into a buzzsaw, right? With Deion Sanders having this team ready to go, the crowd is going to be unreal, Keith. Like I'm expecting this crowd to be on a different decibel level than anything they've ever seen or have ever experienced in Colorado. So looking at the spread, right? Our partners, our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook have Colorado's the spread. They are favored by 2.5 points, Keith. The over-under for the total score is 57.5. Keith, how are you feeling when you see this, right? And you see 2.5 favored by Colorado being favored by 2.5 points. How do you feel about that? Are you going with Nebraska, thinking that they can keep it close, or are you thinking Colorado is going to even go higher than the 2.5? How are you feeling when facing the spread?
I'm picking Colorado, DP, and I'm picking Colorado because this, like Colorado, I think they're gonna show up, right? And I still think before they become a really good team, they still have a ways away. This is about Nebraska, DP. I'm sorry. That game last week, Nebraska versus Minnesota, is like both of y'all could have lost. You know what I'm saying? Like that's when somebody needs to step in with like a moral compass and be like, this is just not good football. Both of y'all gonna walk out of here with an L, and we're gonna give a W to another more deserving team, DP. So if this is more about the whatever Nebraska was doing, I'm not buying in it. And everybody knows how I feel about Matt Rule with his time with the Carolina Panthers, DP. I'm out on that, and it's going to take a while for me to get back in and buy into what Matt Rule is doing in Nebraska. I just know that first outing I was not excited with. This hopefully is a good quarterback duel. If, Jeff Sims can put together the tools and then Shedeur Sanders, does what he did again and kind of show everybody like this is like, that wasn't a one-off. Like I'm the real thing. Like he's able to do something like that. So I'm going Colorado on this. I think Colorado wins the game. I think they win it by more than 3 points.
Oh Jesus!
I think they win it by at least 7
points. He said, forget this 2.5. Forget that 57.5. We got to bump this up to like at least 65. We're going to get a 30-point spread. I'm with you though, Keith. I'm picking Colorado.
I didn't say 43 points. I said more than 3 points. I think
more than, okay. Yeah. I was like, Jesus, Keith. I think you think they're going up against a cup. Nah. But I'm with you. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. I do. Okay. I think this is at worst 14-point game. I'm taking Colorado and I'm adding points to it. That's just where I'm at with this, Keith, because what we saw from Nebraska, and you know me, when we did call a shot, who was one of my guys? I called Jeff Sims, right? And I'm not off that bandwagon. I'm not off that cliff. I'm not jumping off and saying, you know what? I just got to die on my own sword yet. No, I'm not doing that yet, man. Like, yeah, he had a rough week 1, but I think that they'll be better going forward. But I do believe that this is a week. I just think walking into Colorado, like especially off of the performance you had, then you got people like the weirdo off of ESPN, Mad Dog. He says, "Man, I'm rooting for Matt Rule because I'm already Deion'd out." Bro, it's been 1 week. All right, what are we talking about? It's been 1 week, man. You know what I'm saying? So he's over here losing his mind. But I'm gonna tell you something, Keith. Like at the end of the day, I'm picking Colorado. I think Nebraska could have a better end of the season, but just walking into this buzzsaw, nope. 2.5 isn't high enough for my blood. I need more. I need 14 to 18.
Right before we transition to our game picks, right? Our the segment we like the most of doing this. I'm gonna go ahead and lean into Matt Rule a little bit, right? Because he had the comments talking about what he said something similar to, yeah, Colorado, they may be ranked the top 10. Stop it. Stop trying to hedge your bets, right? I tweeted this out, and I'm gonna say this again on this podcast. Stop trying to hedge your bets, because what you're doing is this, right? If you lose the game, DP, then you're gonna say, I told y'all Colorado was a really good team. They should be in the top 10. Then if you win the game, this is what you're gonna do. Hey, I'm a pretty good coach. We just beat a potential top 10 team. All you're doing is hedging your bets. Nobody's seen Colorado beat that TCU team.
Mental gymnastics, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, like nobody said when Colorado beat TCU that this is a top 10 team in the country. Nobody said that. Matt Rule, stop it. It's the coach speak. You're trying to hedge your bets. I'm sorry. And I called you out on it. I'm just not. I'm not for it, man. But DP,
Keith, he's prepping for that post-game press conference.
Yeah, I want to see what he's going to say, because I guarantee he's going to reference that again. But DP, I want to keep this thing going, man. We got to wrap this thing up. We got to go to what? The game picks, right? Like we said, we put it on wax, man. We are picking the games. DP, I'm going to read these things off, man, and let's go. Let's flow through this, right? Matter of fact, we have 5 games. What we're going to do is we're going to swap out one of the games because Tulane's quarterback, Michael Pratt, he may not be playing because he's injured. So we're not going to pick that one because we don't know how that's looking up in the air, right? But let's start with it, right? Let's start with a game we already talked about, Texas A&M versus Miami. DP, who you have?
Give me the U, baby. Give me the U. I'm going Miami, man. It's at home. I'm going Miami. I think TVD Van Dyke goes out there and plays well. I think this defense for Miami is going to lead them to victory, Keith. Give me Miami so we can start next week's show. Next week, I'm going to be on here saying that the U is back.
Oh, man, we're going to have to talk about that, DP. We are going to have to talk about that. DP, I'm going the other way. I'm going SEC. I'm going Texas A&M. Yeah, of course, DP. I'm rolling with it, baby. I'm going Texas A&M. I think they're rolling. They get the job done. Like I said, I actually think I make fun of it, right? Bobby Petrino, is a situation, but I actually think he's a really good play caller. Just him and Hugh Freeze, they just got to get it together, right? You're talking about the offense, they got to get it together, but they both can call plays and know how to coach the game of football. So DP, let's keep this thing flowing, right? We talked about it last year. This was a 63-61 shootout. North Carolina, App State, there was no defense being played. It was just score your touchdowns. And I think this was a Drake May coming out party last year. DP, who wins this game?
The Tar Heels, man. I think it's very hard for me to envision them losing to App State after what they displayed against South Carolina and the talented team for South Carolina last Saturday night, man. Like this North Carolina team, offense and defensively, looked really good for the most part. And I think that their edge rushers, Amari Gaynor, Rucker coming off the edge, they're gonna be able to get in the backfield versus App State. I'm taking Drake May and those Tar Heels, man.
Yeah, they better wake up, DP. They better wake up, and they better call them the App State, right? If you North Carolina, you better walk around and say the App State, because they put up 61 points.
With respect.
Yeah, because they put up 61 points on y'all last year. Then they followed that up to let everybody know that they're the real deal, and they beat Texas A&M, right? Like they upset Texas A&M. So, but I'm still going to pick North Carolina because I'm just believing in the efficiency of Drake May, right? Like just having the better quarterback, group of 5 competition, stuff like that. I'm going North Carolina in this. Boom. DP, next up, I'm going to say let's go Wisconsin versus Washington State. Who you picking?
I'm going upset here. I'm going Cam Ward and Washington State, Keith. I think this is a redemption game for him. He threw for 451 yards. He had almost 50 yards receiving, almost 500 total yards from scrimmage last week by himself, Keith. By himself. The Pac-12 is loaded at quarterback. I think he's about to come into this game. This could be a shootout because now Wisconsin's kind of running spread. I think they have an air raid offense now and everything. So you're seeing easier running lanes for the running backs and everything. But I do think this is a game that Cam Ward wants to get back after how he performed last year. So I'm gonna roll with Cam Ward. I think Washington State gets the upset.
Okay, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going with Wisconsin. I seen some glimpses, right, of their offense from last week, and I like it, right? It's different to see, Wisconsin in 11 personnel, right, and not 12 or 21 or something like that. So I'm gonna go I'm gonna go Wisconsin just because I think they'll be able to win the trenches. But I do, DP, Cam Ward didn't play great last year. I mean, against Wisconsin, I'm expecting a great game from Cam Ward this year. I think he'll be ready for the moment. So let's keep this thing flowing, right? We have a little, this kind of Notre Dame's kind of ACC, right? We're going Notre Dame versus NC State. Who you have in this game?
Man, I'm going upset again. I'm going NC State to protect home field, man. I think Brendan Armstrong, he was the leading passer and rusher for this team. Whether that's good or bad, that's what happened last week. But keep an eye on cornerback Shaheem Battle, really talented corner, guy who's, I think he's kept receivers, in terms of coverage wise. He hasn't given up. If I remember correctly, when I looked at the numbers, I don't believe he's given up. I'm looking at him now. Over 400 yards in the season once. That was 2020, his freshman year. He allowed over 400 yards. Ever since then, last year, Keith, 2021, 199 yards allowed in coverage. Last year, 378. I think he's going to be a big part in this game. And him and Brendan Armstrong, Peyton Wilson, talking about that run game for Notre Dame, Audric Estime running downhill. Watch out for the linebacker, Peyton Wilson. He had an interception last week, and I believe he had like 10 to 11 tackles. He's a tackling machine. I think that North Carolina State's defense, and they've given Sam Hartman trouble even when he was at Wake Forest. So this defense knows how to play Sam Hartman.
That just, you kind of just made that a little different from me. That was very convincing, DP. And I almost want to change my pick, but I'm gonna stay with it. And I'm gonna go Notre Dame because I like what Sam Hartman Notre Dame looks like, right? Like he looks to be a efficient player. But you did make me a little bit nervous about my pick when you brought up, last year and how he played against North Carolina State. But I'm gonna stay with Sam Hartman. I like this version. Obviously, Notre Dame has the tackles, right? Things like that. They're going to be able to run the football. I think they'll be able to keep pace. It'll be a Notre Dame-ish type game where they'll win by 4 or 5 points, right? Be an efficient game. They'll run the football 30 times a game. So I'm going with Notre Dame in this football game. DP, let's finish this up with the Saturday night showdown. How we kick this show off is how we're going to finish this show. Alabama versus Texas. Texas is traveling to Tuscaloosa. Who you have in this game?
Keith, this is tough. This is a tough game to pick, but I'm gonna lean into. I'm gonna go Texas. I think Texas walks in, and I think this. I put on the graphic. I think I put Quinn's redemption. This is his opportunity to redeem not just himself from the injury, but showcase and basically showcase to everybody. If I stay healthy, Bryce Young has another L on his record last year. You know what I mean? Because that Texas offense was moving the ball, and they looked very, very well efficient and well oiled while Quinn was in the game. So I'm taking Texas, man. I think talent-wise, I think they're very, very similar in terms of NFL talent, prospects, things of that nature, man. You talked about T'Vondre Sweat being a key cog in that defense, but Keith also Jadavian Sanders, Adonai Mitchell. They got like 4 running backs that can run, that tote the rock back there, man. All main thing, that offensive line, protect Quinn and allow Quinn to point guard his offense. And I think that they're going to do. I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm picking Texas on the road.
Okay, I like it. I like it enough that I'm not going Texas. DP, we on opposite sides of the fence for every game this week. We're opposite sides of the fence. That lets you know that we have a good week of college football coming up, man. We are split on every single game. I'm going Roll Tide, University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, SEC, whatever you want to call it. I'm going with those guys, man. I believe in Nick Saban, what he's going to do. This is what I think is going to happen. It's going to be a conservative game plan. He's going to run the football. He's going to try to wear Texas down in the trenches, man. I think he's going to try to make Texas run the football. Texas is going to have some success. I'm expecting a close game. I'm expecting a 31-28, a 33-30-ish type football game, but I think Alabama just squeaks it out enough because they are the superior team in the trenches. But I do think this will be fun. This should be one of the better college football games that we have this entire season. Speaking of entire season, DP, we here. Shout out to you guys. We are here the entire season, every Saturday morning. Get it kicked off with your guys, man. The dynamic duo over here at Locked On NFL Draft. Sure. Y'all know I'm Keith Sanchez. You can find me at the Talent Code. Then you got DP_NFL, man. Damian Parsons, man. You know where to find him at on Twitter, man. Make sure you tap in with our guys. Hit the notification, hit the bell. So every Saturday you can be aware when we're going live. We're doing it the same thing, the same time, every single Saturday this college football season.
And guys, I'm gonna tell you one thing right here. Keep your eyes on this fella here. Shedeur Sanders, baby. Keep your eyes on the man, the myth, the legend, Shedeur Sanders. Talk about NFL, locked on NFL draft stock watch. His arrow is pointing up. And Keith, if there's stock on Shedeur Sanders, I might be putting all my chips on the table. I'm trying to buy every bit of it because I think this young man is going to be a Heisman candidate. And if he keeps playing the way he played last week, I think he throws for 350, 4 more tutties this week, Keith. So guys, listen, that is our live show. Like Keith said, you can find us on Twitter and everything. He gave you all the instructions for YouTube. Tap back in with us next week. We're going to have more graphics, more discussions. We're going to see who's leading the picks. We went completely the opposite directions on this show. We're going to see how the spread goes, all of that, man. So appreciate y'all for tapping in with us. Talk to us on Twitter and on YouTube because we talk back here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.